Lady Geist may be one of the simplest heroes in Deadlock. She doesn't really have CC, and she has no mobility in her kit. All she does is shoot her tiny gun and throw stuff. Plus, she has a little hand. Despite these shortcomings, she has the ability to consistently deal the most damage every game, with very little effort. In this video, I'm going to go through how to minimize her weaknesses and play to her strengths, so you can solo carry games. This is an in-depth look into Oathkeeper's Spirit Snatcher, Lady Geist. This guide will be broken down into the following sections: laning phase, mid-game, late game, items, and general tips and tricks.
A reversal of fortune.
For the ability order, I start Essence Bomb, then Malice second, and Life Drain third. Here's the full ability order I typically run. The only thing I might change is I may max Life Drain second over Malice, especially if our team is ahead. The silence on tier 3 Life Drain can be extremely oppressive and will help snowball a lead. Plus, the extra Malice shards aren't 100% necessary if you're accurate, at least not till large team fights break out in the late game. Her primary strengths during laning phase are as follows. She has great poke damage with her abilities and her gun. She has a pretty high starting health pool at 650, and she's great in solo names because all her poke and damage amps stack on one player. For laning weaknesses, she has subpar sustain early due to abilities costing health. She can also be somewhat weak in duo lanes because your poke will generally be split between two players. Also, she's just kinda slow and has no mobility early. Geist doesn't have any matchups that are completely unplayable, but you may struggle against heroes with high mobility and/or high sustain. Regardless, even if you're not able to kill your lane opponent, you can constantly shove waves to take Guardian first, effectively winning the lane. You can play aggro with Geist, but you may get out-sustained by certain heroes, like Mo and Krill, Dynamo, and McGinnis. Especially if you're not confident in your matchup, you should prioritize staying alive and keeping your soul count up. Particularly in the early game, kills are much less valuable than even a single trooper wave, so coin flipping a fight early isn't worth the downside of falling behind on souls and/or losing your Guardian. Geist is a late game carry, so if you at least stay even on souls in lane, you're already looking good. During laning phase especially, be careful not to just spam your abilities without intention. Before you get some mitigation from Spirit Lifesteal, Extra Health, or Spirit Res, the life cost associated with them is pretty high, so you should be careful placing your abilities to ensure they're likely to hit. If you just throw out bomb every time it's up, you can kill yourself pretty fast. Here's a few basic tips if you're struggling to hit your bombs. Try to center the bombs right where the enemy is standing to minimize the chances of them dashing out in time. Also, use bomb after you know your opponent is low on stamina. This way, they won't even have the stamina to dash out. For Malice, use this when you have the potential for subsequent gun attacks to maximize the value of the damage amp. Malice doesn't do much damage on its own, so you want to make sure you're getting damage off afterwards. This way you're taking advantage of the primary value, the damage amp. In terms of positioning during laning phase, as Geist you want to keep your distance. If you push too far up, you're an easy gank target. Most of the time, your ideal positioning will be on mid-bridge. This gives you a great vantage point to harass the enemy with gun attacks, and allows you to hit your bombs much easier. It's also relatively safe against potential ganks, because you're just one dash jump away from your Guardian. Itemizing early can vary, but I normally will always buy a Restorative Shot, Mystic Reach, Mystic Burst, and Sprint Boots. Besides that, I may build a few different Vitality items depending on the matchup. Items like Enduring Spirit, Healing Right, and Extra Regen.
I defy fate.
As I state in every video, the primary objectives for your team throughout the mid-game are always Guardians and Walkers, Jungle Camps, and the Soul Urn. Unfortunately, Geist has very little innate utility like other heroes do. You can't really initiate fights because you have no hard CC. You're pretty slow, so you aren't great for running Soul Urn. And you have no escape abilities, so your split pushing potential is pretty limited. That being said, you should try your best to support your team with damage when they go for these objectives. But it's important to remember your weaknesses and not overcommit to fights before you're power spiked. As Geist, your primary goal is soul farming. You can clear waves with a single bomb, so ideally you can be roaming around the map, catching waves and protecting objectives. All the while, you're weaving in jungle camps and boxes. Unless your team is pressing a significant advantage, taking fights is your last priority. Geist excels in linear fights on the ground. This allows her Malice to hit as many targets as possible, and you can actually get damage with your bomb. Hitting targets in the air like Grey Talon, Vindicta, and Lash is not an issue because Malice's hitbox is very large, but aiming in the air will prevent you from getting malice stacks on ground targets. The best burst damage in your kit will come from bomb plus malice. Due to your bomb's explosion delay, you can first throw your bomb, then instantly use malice, and the target will have the damage amp debuff applied before the bomb explodes. This is especially effective in lane. You'll often get surprise kills because enemies may not anticipate the additional damage amp from malice. This is what a typical mid-game build would look like.
You have no idea what I'm capable of.
Late game, you take over. If you've built correctly, you should be able to outclass anyone in an extended fight. This is when you've hit your power spike from Leech and Mystic Reverb, and you should be consistently looking for fights. You're still prone to silences and stuns, so you should be careful with your positioning. But you do have your ult and Warpstone to bail you out, so you should be fine as long as you're not 100 to 0'd. If you have 2+ malice stacks on your target, you can pretty much outduel anyone. Getting malice stacks on your enemies shouldn't be an issue, because your tier 3 malice will cover entire lanes. It also passes through creeps, guardians, and walkers. Don't be afraid to trade poke with anyone from a distance. You can trade damage out in the open from a distance against multiple enemies, and you're likely to come out on top. Also, the longer fights last, the greater your chances of winning, due to your damage amp from malice. This is what a typical late game build would look like.
Fool! This isn't over yet!
This build is loosely based on the car battery build with some changes to better fit my own playstyle. It's a hybrid spirit-heavy build. Gun builds can be great on Geist as well, but I think a spirit-heavy build provides the most value given Geist's kit. Also, it's just easier if you're bad at aiming. This build is what I'm currently running, but even I change builds constantly depending on matchups and how I like to play. Build what you like and what helps you win games. If you're new to the hero or just want a solid build, follow what I have here. Warpstone. I build this pretty much every game as Geist. This gives you some solid mobility that Geist is severely lacking. It also makes getting your ult off much easier. The secondary stats fit into your build nicely as well. Mystic Reverb. This should pretty much always be put on Malice. Malice is a lower cooldown than Bomb, so you'll proc Mystic Reverb on cooldown. Also, Malice can be hit much easier late game. Everyone has 100 different types of movement and escapes late game, so you don't want to rely too much on a bomb that can easily be dodged. Leech. This one's pretty self-explanatory, but Leech just gives that survivability that Geist is severely lacking early. You don't necessarily need Leech, but it feels really nice to have the additional gun and spirit lifesteal. If you aren't having any issues staying alive, you can just opt to replace spirit lifesteal with Leech late game. Healing Booster. Not only is this great for boosting your self-healing, but it also mitigates the effects from Healbane. Any decent player is going to build Healbane against a Geist late game. Healing Booster will help mitigate the damage cut from this. Healbane. Healbane helps ensure you win those long extended fights that you should be winning. Characters like Infernus also have very good sustain in longer fights, so picking up Healbane will give you the edge against these players. Also, your spells are just great for spreading debuffs because they cover such large areas. Return Fire. This is another great consideration for Geist. Without CC, Geist is going to be trading damage with the enemy constantly, so having Return Fire just gives you that extra damage when they hit you back. As a bonus, it gives you spirit power as well. Phantom Strike. This item is pretty cheesy, but it can be fun to build sometimes. This would definitely be considered a luxury item. The main idea behind this is to Phantom Strike on an enemy when you're low health, swap them, then one-shot them, then Warpstone out. Of course, if you're really sweating in a game and you really want to go for the win, I wouldn't always go for this because it's pretty expensive, but it's fun to jump scare people with it. Mystic Slow. As I've stated before, Geist is great at spreading debuffs, so Mystic Slow can be a solid choice in certain matchups. The slow will stack with the slow from Mystic Reverb, and the fire rate cut provides solid utility for your team.
I want your soul!
Your ultimate counts as a heal, so it benefits from Healing Booster and can be nerfed with Healbane. If you and your opponent are both full HP, Soul Exchange will still deal damage to your enemy, about 1/3 of their current health. You can't actually swap to lose health from Soul Exchange, even if your enemy is low and you're full HP. Spirit Armor does mitigate the self-inflicted damage from your Essence Bomb and Malice. The self-inflicted damage from your 1 and 3 are not percentage-based. They are flat amounts, so building HP does help minimize this damage as well. The self-inflicted damage from Essence Bomb stays the same regardless of the tier. Malice's self-inflicted damage will increase based on the tier, 32 damage at base and 72 at tier 3. Remember that alt casting your life drain on a teammate will heal them and drain you. It doesn't have too many use cases, but can definitely help in a pinch if your teammate is dying from something like Infernus Burn or Shiv Bleed. Life Drain will heal more if used on a target with Malice stacks. Of course, this is common sense, but it's just a small detail to keep in mind. If you have both Life Drain and Malice up, you should always use Malice first to maximize your heal. That's all for now. Let me know if I missed anything or if you have any thoughts on what heroes I should cover next. I've also been considering doing some full match gameplay analysis. Be sure to like and sub if you like this kind of stuff. Thanks for watching.